welcome back. This is Steve Gilmore. This is the Gilmore Gang for Friday of, what is this, March? And
just feels like it.
Cheap laugh. And we're joined by some people in New York who are holding down the Tiger Front. So, Dan Farber, welcome on the phone from New York.
Thanks, Steve. Good to be here.
Good to have you again. Also on the phone, Robert Scoble from God knows where.
A building on Linton Avenue.
Okay, and you're on the way to Second Life, right?
Well,
He's in Second Life.
Isn't it everywhere?
It's
Second
everywhere.
Life's downstairs in my building too.
All right, and then we've got two Brits and one lady, and so the lady is Pistachio Laura Fitton. Welcome, Laura.
Hey there.
Why are you called Pistachio again?
Because I'm nuts. It was the paint in my home office.
Well, we're all nuts. But,
Pistachio ice cream color.
Oh, okay. Very good. And then in no particular order, Andrew Keene from the great state of Alabama.
Hello.
Speaking of nuts.
Yeah. Hi, Laura.
Andrew wants to be nuts. He's working on his dissertation on trying to be nuts. And then Kevin Marks holding down the technology front here in the Valley at Ribbit. So, Dan Farber, what's your take on Buzz? Have you looked at it at all?
Well, I have joined the Buzz, and really haven't spent that much time exploring it. It's just yet another social network, and so far, it just seems like it's something bolted on to my Gmail, and I tend to think that purpose-built applications will do better, as opposed to those where they start out as one thing and then they start adding in all these other features. Because by the time you've added all those features, it's time for a complete rewrite of the whole thing.
So you think that when they finish making it look like FriendFeed, then they'll be done, right?
No, then they'll have to completely redo it.
Why
I'm curious what you mean by having joined it. I mean, there was no way not to join it. It just showed up one day.
Oh, that's not true. Do you just click randomly on links?
Well, I think obviously Google ran into a little bit of an issue in terms of how they rolled it out, and that people automatically follow you without you having any knowledge of that happening and so on. But it's a grand experiment.
I mean, do you really
coming from Google? Of course, it carries a much bigger price in terms of getting it right or wrong. Given the
I'm not
number
sure
of
that
people and scale of the company.
I'm not sure that that there was such a price paid for allegedly getting it wrong. It looks like they got a lot of, pardon the expression, buzz around the product as a result of the way they did it. And
well, it's no different than Tiger Woods.
Well, he did pretty well today. So, are you suggesting that we need to apologize to Google for using their product without their permission?
No. What I'm saying is that when Google burps or Tiger suddenly appears, there's a tremendous amount of buzz.
I was listening.
Dan, it's a good point because some of the early blow-ups over Facebook, people were like, "Oh, we're all so shocked," and then that week, maybe 12 people from high school that I never would have pegged to be onliners followed me on Facebook because they heard about it in the news.
And that was a good thing, right?
Well, it got them more members.
No, but I mean, in terms of your...
Was it good for you?
Your experience.
No, I wasn't happy to know.
So those are the people that you didn't want to know from high school.
No comment.
In other words, yes. The last time you had a no comment, I think it was about being bought by by Twitter. Now that didn't happen, but something did happen. What's the story with your company and its investments, and what's going on there?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Over the fall, we were very busy with launching and trying to get up to speed, and more than our fair share of press. We're very grateful for all that. It actually brought some interesting opportunities to the fore, and one of them was that Flybridge Capital, really awesome VC here in Boston, came in and simply preempted our Series A. So it's actually all done about 6 months ahead of schedule, and we're able to put our heads back down and focus. And so I haven't done so much press and interviews lately.
And when you say focus, focus on what?
Building the product, building up the community, iterating fast on the product, making it more and more what the developers need. We launched in January a very, very early prototype of self-serve e-commerce tools. So any Twitter app developer can offer some aspect of their app or some service related to their app or the app itself, if that pertains, for sale right on the platform.
Are you going to build something comparable on top of Buzz?
Possibly. Google itself is talking about having an app store for Google stuff, so I don't know.
Well, to Dan Farber's comment about yet another social network, is that your take on Buzz?
Honestly, I took my first vacation in 6 years. I was in Costa Rica surfing and doing yoga when Buzz broke out. I was online just enough to see about it, and actually there was a woman from Google on my trip. We chatted. It just showed up in my inbox one day. I had no sense of joining whatsoever. I had a sense of it showing up and starting to get messages from it, and it was a bit annoying.
So you're of the somebody needs to apologize camp.
Meh, I'm not all shocked and outraged because drama is too much energy and I have a lot to do. But it was a little odd. It could work well. They have a big user base.
So Andrew, you've been on the show a couple of times recently, and we've talked a little bit about Buzz. Any new comments on it, or are you on to something more interesting?
Buzz, but
sorry,
I don't agree. I don't agree with Laura in the sense that I don't have the Google email. I don't have Gmail, so for me, it's irrelevant. I think it should remind people that Gmail comes with a price. Nothing is for free.
Good point.
So you're not using it, in other words?
No, I'd never use it.
I'm not using it. It's just there.
But
do you have a Google account at all, Andrew?
No, I don't.
Ah,
I don't use email. I haven't learned yet.
Well, I think
you still use Parchment. Yeah.
He's still using a thread.
He sends
that I
heralds
sent
with
him from
trumpets.
like the early 50s.
Smoke signals?
Pigeons.
Hey, Andy, are you AOL?
Say again, Robert?
Are you still using AOL?
You sound like you're coming from AOL. Where are you?
He's in Second Life, Andrew.
I'm on Highway 101 in my Toyota.
In your Toyota, great.
But this comes back, Steve, to my point about you don't like. I think we had this conversation last time. I'm happy to pay $100 a year to Apple so that my email comes free of advertising.
Oh, well, you're the one.
It comes free of any kind of accidental, on-purpose add-ons when I wake up one morning and suddenly all my emails are public for the whole world.
Well, no, Apple have done that kind of thing before. Apple have bait and switched
Have they?
that.
With the email?
Well, Apple launched Mac.com as a free service, then started charging for it after I'd signed up my family for the accounts, which means that I got bait and switched into that because they wanted to keep those email addresses. So I'm paying them $100 a year to keep those email addresses going. So yeah, I don't think Google are alone on doing bait and switch things like that. But Apple has certainly done worse to me. And Apple also, if you go to the mail.web version of Mac.com to try and get your email over the web, you go from an Android, download this iPhone app, which is not exactly helpful when I'm trying to read my email on the phone. So I'd say, between the two, I'm not sure that you can make a case that Apple's doing a better job there than Google about this.
It's clear, though, Steve, that talking about Google Buzz, that they really didn't test this for very high flow users. That they only used it internally with the small networks that that you work with. There's, Larry Page might be seen by everybody. And in fact, they knew about some of the problems with the high flow users because of Larry Page, but they didn't fix them before they released it.
Yeah, but that's like, the guy at the press conference, Todd Jackson. I asked the question about whether or not this was, basically that FriendFeed had been bought for $50 million by Facebook, and that Google got all the intellectual property. And he basically said something really ridiculous, like that we don't pay attention to what our competitors do. We're only interested in what our users want. And I thought that was interesting, given the fact that nobody knew what this was until they released it. That's number one. So the users certainly weren't involved in those decisions. And and it's ridiculous to assume, not to mention the fact that Todd Jackson has a FriendFeed account, as somebody pointed out. It's ridiculous to assume that they haven't taken a look at the most advanced service for solving all of these problems that you're talking about.
Yeah, but the problem was they copied the worst features of FriendFeed and they didn't put in place the best ones. And so I found that very interesting that they didn't even learn from FriendFeed and try to improve the system or try to really innovate. They just copied poorly. It was like it's like Google Buzz is like a poor copy of FriendFeed. Other than it has lots of users. I mean, that is very apparent. I have it running on a 24-inch screen at home, and there's a lot more usage on Google Buzz already than there is on FriendFeed because of that integration with Gmail.
Precisely to drive the users. That was the point there. They've had a fairly similar service running in Google Reader, which has a tiny fraction of the number of users that Gmail does, for a year now. We've debated this before, Steve. And the slightly sad thing was they made several of the same missteps they made when they launched that, about promoting one set of relationships and another set of relationships, assuming they're the same, and not making it very straightforward to understand what had happened there. So suddenly we found, I'm following a bunch of people. And they're showing up on my profile. Where did that come from? And clearly that upset a lot of people who had a mental model of how the system behaved and had that mental model violated by this sort of what Google sees as a technical change and what they see as you're merging two different compartments of my life that I don't want connected. Thank you.
But I think that, Kevin, I don't think it's a fair comparison. I'm not such a big backer of Apple. You're making the comparison between what Google did and what Apple did. What Apple did was, I'm not saying necessarily a good thing, but it wasn't taking advantage of you as a user in the same way as Google has with this. I mean, it was simply
They're charging me $100 a year to keep the email addresses that they gave me for free. That's totally taking advantage of me. And and they've got a web hosting thing that I pay for that they then cut off if I get any traffic to it, and end up taking my accounts offline. I've messed around by them a lot before. So I think Apple is not a sort of a shining example of how to do these services well either.
Well, I accept that, but there's still a difference, it seems to me, between taking advantage of people in terms of charging them for free, what had been free, a free product, and actually taking advantage of people in terms of information and privacy, which seems to me a much more dangerous and profound issue.
Yeah, no, they definitely got it wrong. Each of the things they did was the same as every other service does. When you go to sign up for Twitter or for Facebook, it says, give me your Gmail password and let me import your friends. And some of them make those public, but they actually give you a bit of user interface along the way. And the thing that Google did was, and if you sign up for FriendFeed, you sign in with Gmail, it pulls in all your friends, it creates the following list for the ones that you're following, and it makes that public for you in exactly the same way, except that you've actually clicked a button to do that. Whereas, as Laura says, with Buzz, you suddenly you log into Gmail one day, and there's this little extra bucket in there, and when you click on it, you find that you're already following a bunch of people that you weren't sure why you're following them and what they're doing there.
Well, I don't. Go ahead.
Right. The question I have is, why haven't they learned from Facebook and Twitter and put in place better systems to handle friends and followers? I mean, they did such a lame copy. There's no lists. There's no groups. There's no.
How's that
privacy,
list thing's
there's
going
no
for
freedom.
you? Are you still using lists, Robert?
Though there are groups, just they're a bit hidden.
Are you still using lists, Robert?
He is the
Absolutely.
list. He's missed the list.
You can follow my list. You can see them on Twitter and see how I group people, right? I can't do that on Google Ads. And on FriendFeed, I can even have a private list where I move people like you into a private list that nobody can see, so that if I have a journalism, source reporter thing going with you, I can put you in a private list that nobody can see, and that would have helped immensely with the privacy complaints.
Yeah, but all of these things, it's pretty clear that all these things are easily added to this architecture. I mean, the biggest crime that Google has committed here, if they have done so, which I don't think they have, is to release something, in process, in beta. Gee, that's a real shocker. I mean, Gmail unfortunately came out of beta.
Google has so many resources and such an ability to study the marketplace. That's why I'm disappointed. It's like,
Why do you say that? There's no evidence that they have an ability to study the marketplace. What they do very well is to study the advertising environment, and they made a lot of money doing that. But they show no. I mean, what about Google Wave? I mean, what happened to Google Wave?
Isn't this Wave?
No.
No.
What's the difference?
Well, the difference is that
Google Wave is an interesting technology that is stuck in a bad UI and has scalability problems. They're working right now on the scalability problems, and they won't fix the UI for 6 months to 8 to 12 months, I hear. But it's still a brilliant new technology. It's like a super wiki. It's a infinite strip that we all can write on it anywhere along that strip. I don't think Buzz takes anything away from Wave.
in terms of them integrating Wave into their architecture or vice versa, that's been an abject failure, and there's no reason to assume that Wave is ever going to be. I mean, what was the company that was integrated, Kevin, that was bought that Joe, I've forgotten his name, was the CEO of?
The stuff that became Google Sites?
No, it was sort of like a Notes knockoff using the web, and it was bought and it's been turned into some aspect of Google Apps, but not with any of the original code. That's for sure.
Well, that's usually been the issue when Google buys someone, is that it's like, okay, now rewrite everything to run on our infrastructure, and that's what happened with Jaiku, and it's what happened with Presently and the others. And some of them did that quickly and got that working well, and some of them it bogged them down. Certainly, getting Jaiku onto Google infrastructure was a big job, and by the time they'd done it, it was almost too late. What I think. The difference between this and Wave at the fundamental level is that Wave is you're editing a document, whereas this is you're having a conversation. And even though they've embedded conversations in Wave, that isn't its primary function. And because
really?
Wave,
what is its primary function?
To edit a document, it's a wiki. It's a shared document that you're editing at the same time. So in a sense, Wave is like the successor to Google Docs in that you're editing a shared document, but with a better way of doing that. Whereas Buzz is very much doing the activity streams flow thing that I've been saying is really important for a while, and it has clearly been really important to Twitter and Facebook and the other social networks that have adopted this idea. So Google has had stuff to do that, but it's been hidden away in the corner. It's been part of Reader. There's been bits of it in Friend Connect and so on, but it hasn't really been obvious. And what they've done is they've taken that and put that into Gmail and said, okay, this is significant enough that we think this belongs in our flagship product with its 100 million plus users. So that decision itself, I think, is a bold one. The way they did it was wrong, and I was the one attacking it last week when you guys were defending it. I think the way they confuse people about who they're sharing with, and what's shown there was very bad. And I'm not sure that the stuff that Eric was saying this week didn't seem to reflect the seriousness that people had seen from that. But the underlying idea of building a flow-like system that we've grown used to with Twitter into Gmail, I think is a great step forward. Is very useful because it brings it to a whole bunch of people who weren't using it before and may find a use for it.
Laura, do you really think that this is going to have any significant impact beyond? I mean, basically, what I think is happening is we're all waiting for the iPad, and we're, basically have nothing that we can think about other than the iPad. So we're in this kind of loop where we're.
All right, you all need startups to run because I barely have time to think about Buzz. I've got to,
Right. How about the iPad?
Got a lot of work ahead of me.
Are you thinking about the iPad?
I took a picture of myself with the lid of my MacBook on iPad release day, and I pulled one of the screenshots off Engadget, and I said, "Oh, look, they sent me a demo unit." And people were like, "Oh, how'd you get that?" I'm like, "You're kidding me, right? It looks like the lid of a MacBook." I think it could be interesting. It could change a lot.
You don't think that it's going to have an impact on an app store? I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, obviously.
All right, so
No, I just...
Your investors are watching.
My investors know everything. They always have an interesting strategy, don't they? Because they roll it out with enough features crippled, if you look at kind of how they rolled out the iPhone, that the rabid early adopters will absolutely buy it no matter what because, oh my God, it's an Apple product. And then they roll out what people really want it to do to make sure that all those people buy it again, and then eventually it trickles down to where more practical people finally say, yeah, that is a really great tool for me. I'm a very late adapter. I got an iPhone the same day 140 launched. I was BlackBerry up until then. But I love my iPhone now. I absolutely love it. It's great.
Right.
But and this is why I find Buzz really interesting, actually. On the one hand, I think, wow, you've got it in this massive pool in their flagship product with this huge potential user base. But I always looked at the relative complexity of friend feed over Twitter and thought I'm never going to be able to tell, my people, because my audience is like the everyman and the business user and the people who need something much simpler and aren't early tech cutting edge. I wonder if its complexity, its friend feedness, will fit with that wide mainstream audience. I mean, Gmail is not a mainstream audience, but it's more mainstream than, well, for example, us.
Pistachio?
So, yeah.
I've heard the simplicity argument for years now, and I think it's totally BS. Facebook proves that it's BS. Facebook is way more complicated than friend feed ever was, and the mass market has adopted Facebook in mass droves because of the hooks the social hooks that we have there. Our high school friends are there, and that proves that we will learn complicated systems when our brands force us to learn them. But the question is, does Google have enough hooks yet to force enough people to learn it? So far, they've been very successful with Buzz. It's way more popular among normal people than Twitter is right now. It's getting a lot of flow on my screen.
Okay, so we decided everything?
Yeah. We're done.
All right, well,
so, I mean, the interesting thing for Buzz for me is that they've said we're committed to doing this through the open standards that I won't bother reciting the names of again because we've been through these before, that conversation is going on, and suddenly that will give them more traction, which should help us build a more distributed version of Twitter, of Facebook, of these things, because it doesn't need to be centered in one place. So by creating a new center of gravity, but the one that is designed to interoperate, potentially Google has done something good there, but they're going to have to follow through with that and make sure that this is actually true. And those of us who are building stuff in this realm are going to have to help, hold them to account and make sure that does actually happen. But what we've seen with Status.net's OStatus, picking up on PubSub, Hubbub, and activity streams and connecting that together, but also reflecting a Twitter API is going to be interesting. That means that people can potentially develop applications against the the status.net clone of the Twitter API and have the flow of stuff going back and forth that goes into Buzz and FriendFeed as well.
Yeah,
so,
I think you have to just take a look at what Dave Weiner's been spamming the network with about Louis Gray's comments. Shows you the virulence with which he feels he's being attacked by the success of Google in marshaling these open standards.
I was a little puzzled by that. I don't understand why Dave is now saying you shouldn't be doing this using feeds. He's saying go clone somebody else's API, don't use feeds. Whereas he's been pushing feeds for the last 10 years very successfully and done a great job there of getting that adopted. And one of the things that does work with Buzz is connecting the feeds together from one site to another and having the stuff flow back and forth.
Yeah, what we want is it to be more easily accessible than it currently is. So I want more invasion of privacy rather than less, personally. Andrew, you got a comment about that?
Yeah, I want to know everything about you. My son just announced all sorts of things. I think that if you're willing to go very public, I will too.
Wow.
Should we reveal what we really get up to together privately?
Yeah, I think so.
We'll have to do it.
Yeah.
I'm writing a book.
I'm old enough now that I've forgotten it, so I'm hoping you'll remind me.
Well, we have to bring in Tina too, because it's all of us, right?
That's true.
And Laura.
God knows what we're talking about.
And Kevin, all of us.
Dan Farber, are you still there, or do you have to bail?
No, I'm still here.
He's waiting for a scoop now.
So Dan, do you actually use technology anymore, or are you just completely in television?
No, I tend to use technology. CBSNews.com is a website, and we do all those things that websites do.
There was I think, a very important announcement, speaking of what Laura was talking about earlier about the iPad and leaving out features, or what she calls features and what I call bugs, like Flash. CBS announced, or who's the chairman, the CEO of CBS? Julie Chen's husband.
Leslie Moonves?
Yes. He announced this morning that CBS is going to start lowering the price of certain CBS shows to $1 or less in order to, basically jumpstart, a flow of those types of programming through iTunes rather than, waiting for Hulu to do an H.264 compatible version of their site.
It got me there. I think what he said was that they'll mark down the price of shows from $1.99 to 99 cents, and
right. And the logic of that, I think, has to do with the fact that there are people saying that people don't want to that the iPad is not going to have Flash, therefore Hulu isn't going to work on it. So there are two schools of thought about this. One is that by a month from now, when the iPad ships, that Hulu will create a site that will work as does YouTube on the iPad without a problem, or they will just go and buy, for a trivial cost, relatively speaking, these programs directly through iTunes in the store. So it seems to be a sort of the beginning of a shift to accommodate Apple's exclusion of Flash. I think it's pretty important.
Well,
I really think they're going to persist.
I just think the idea is you want to be on all the platforms where there's potential ka-ching. There's TV.com, which is part of CBS. There's Hulu, and there's going to be... I've got to take a call, so hang on.
Okay.
Carry on your conversation.
Okay. Laura, go ahead.
Do you really think the lack of Flash is going to be a persistent feature or bug?
Absolutely. No, I think it will be a bug for them to have it.
It'll be a feature for them to have to not have Flash. Yes, they're going to stick with that.
I agree.
And they're going to drive people to adopt H.264 for video and their own API or HTML5 for dynamic stuff.
And they'll do that in concert, in collaboration with their so-called competitor Google. Between the two of them, they're going to change the market to the point where it's going to be difficult for sites to function in a flash-only environment. And I think that'll take a very short amount of time to manifest itself. You disagree, Laura?
No.
So were you thinking of that when you were talking about dumbing down the iPad? Were you thinking of the lack of flash as one of those bugs or features?
I was honestly more focused on the communication stuff.
Such as?
Camera, microphone.
So do you think that Rev 2 or a third-party add-on camera is going to appear rather quickly?
Definitely.
So when you're dealing with applications coming into the Twitter store, how many of them do you think will be iPad-enabled within the first 6 months?
Well, we've got about between 100 and 200 iPhone apps, and technically don't those all work? I don't know how many will be specially optimized for the iPod.
Right. And also, obviously, all the web ones will work because the iPad is a really nice browser. So unless they've said, okay, we're going to use Flash to visualize Twitter or something, if they're actually using something that will work, that will work on there too. So my take on it is that it's potentially a new place for the developers to put stuff up there. But if it's a web app, they can work on the iPad directly and potentially take advantage of the screen reader state, but they may have to adapt a bit to new gestures and stuff you scrub on it. So part of this is that it's the development model is getting complicated for someone who's trying to build stuff, because you've got to decide, am I building it as a web thing? If I am, which web technologies do I use? Or am I going to get a separate development team to build a native application to do all of it or part of it on iPhone, on Android, on BlackBerry, and decide which bit of your app falls which side of it. So, as with Laura collating all the applications that map into the Twitter space, bridging those across to different devices is part of the use of 140 for me is saying, okay, I've got this phone, how do I get Twitter on that? And they've got a list of applications by device, which means that if I want it on if I want it on this, I can find the app that works on that. Whereas, those of us on the development side are sitting here going, well, what do we build? How do we decide which of these platforms to build on? That gets trickier.
Well, and then the other thing is with the iPhone was out and people were rabidly into it, and it was rabidly popular for a year and a half before there was an SDK. So there was plenty of time for developers to build up a really strong appetite for getting to that audience. I think they'll want to see that the audience is there before they start really, really jumping in.
What percentage of...
I disagree with Pistachio. These guys, I'm talking all the top-tier Twitter app developers, like the Feedback, the TweetDeck, the Tweety. If you want to be seen as a top-tier Twitter app developer that has the best of breed across platforms, you have to do an iPad version, because the iPad is going to have enough of the leading-edge, early adopter, influential users like me and like Steve and Mike Arrington. That they will, if you don't have a version for the iPad on day one, you're going to be seen as somebody who's lame and not up to date.
Okay, but you're talking about 5 developers. I'm talking about all of them.
I know, but there's...
Right, so the clients is a relatively small category.
You think that
a lot of
need to have that brand.
You think that the impact of the... That's an iPhone, I can tell. You think the impact of the iPad is based on its numbers as opposed to its the direction that it's going to pivot the market?
I didn't say numbers, I said who. So that's both how many and which types of people. I mean, he starts his speech off saying you have this in the kitchen, right? So are they going for a whole different user base that is not us. I mean, I think the most interesting area of growth in Twitter apps we're seeing right now are the things that are quite intentionally not built for pistachios and scobalizers, the things that help an ordinary person stumble up to Twitter and start playing with the app in context and go, oh, Twitter makes sense, whether it's a news visualization or a really, really simplified business dashboard that takes no time to train your people on. And so I don't know, I just really think it depends on what the user base is and what they're doing with the thing.
Mm-hmm.
There's always been so much hype every time there was a pad-style computer, and this is very new and very different, yes, but it is another pad-style computer, and those have not historically always caught on.
Yeah, I think that's missing the fundamental of this. I mean, before, many people said the same thing about the iPhone. Nobody that I knew, but I read about it. Occasionally that people would say that the iPhone was, who needs a smartphone? I think that's a fundamental. I think that's a conservative assessment, which will be accurate, but at the same time, I think that what will happen with the iPad's release, as it's already happened in terms of the media response to it, in terms of the shifting of business models to accommodate this platform, is it's going to create environments which are going to not only work on the iPhone, they're also going to work on the Nexus One, and as a result of the ubiquity across those three platforms, it's going to strengthen WebKit development to make that basically the fundamental standard for development. And then you're going to get all these developers that you're thinking are in some sort of a small relative position are actually going to become the dominant set of developers, aligned, I think, significantly with the Windows developers, which are now starting to come online now that Microsoft has a clue with a mobile device on the horizon. So I think it's a big deal. And I think it goes beyond just the ghetto of a tablet device. I think that's if the iPhone didn't exist, I would agree with you. But the iPhone has existed and proliferated in astounding numbers, and it's set up a series of gestures that we are all comfortable with for a larger device. So I think it's much more significant than the early adopter market that Scoble represents.
I think one of the things that I've seen that's a bit odd to me was seeing some of the demos that the media companies are putting together. The Wired demo of here's our new iPad app, and getting flashbacks to 15 years ago when we were doing CD-ROM development and saying the future of publishing will be dynamic media on these special devices. And half of me says, great, we're finally delivering on the stuff that we were promising 15 years ago. The other half says, well, hang on a minute. What's stopping you doing video in pages now on the web? What's stopping you doing manipulable objects on the web? We've had that for 15 years, and yet you're still pumping out something that thinks it's print. Why does the iPad suddenly mean that media companies are going to be good at this and are going to be able to afford the production costs of creating video for every story?
Is it possible, Kevin, that...
I'm sorry, go ahead, Dan, and then Andrew, just let's hear from Dan and then you.
Okay.
No, I just think what Kevin said is very accurate, that you can create those magazines online and all the content's there and it can be interactive to some degree, but I think that the big difference is, and we've been working on this variously for years, is that you don't really want web pages, you actually do want applications because they can create a much richer user experience. But as Kevin points out, there's a cost associated with developing those things. There's a lack of expertise. There's a lack of cultural capabilities within a lot of these large media companies to do these kinds of things. They're just not fast. They're slow, and then they take vast amounts of money as opposed to smaller companies that can do this on the fly. But this is just like the CD-ROM revolution of 15 years ago, which is build great interactive experience as opposed to crappy web pages.
Andrew?
No, I agree. I think that maybe the one difference is that consumers are comfortable paying for apps, and they're not generally comfortable paying for content on the internet. So perhaps big publishers now are more confident about really investing significant resources in apps because they feel they can get a serious return on their investment.
Robert?
Steve, last week I saw Wired Magazine show off its prototype of the tablet application, and it looks like it uses all the gestures that the iPhone introduced to us, you know, swiping your finger to go next, double-clicking to zoom in, spreading your finger to zoom in further, those kinds of gestures. And I think that, you know, it was clear they developed it in Flash, but they said they're definitely working on the iPad version. And I think it's going to be something that when you see it over a friend's house, you're going to want that Wired magazine on an iPad as well. It's very compelling looking.
And I think, you know, there's different use cases. You might want that very rich interactive experience where you can do all those gestures and drill down. But on the other hand, you may just want, you know, quick web pages where you just kind of get what you want as opposed to having to kind of have a multi-course meal.
Can one of you guys tell me about this rich interactive experience I have? What exactly else I'm going to be doing in my life when I have it? Because when I have the rich interactive experience on my laptop, I'm doing a very particular thing, sitting down, very focused in the screen, doing my thing. When I have it on my iPhone, I'm on the fly. I'm often got a kid on one arm. I'm running to a meeting. I'm at a conference. I just don't picture where I am, what hour of the day, where I'm sitting, what furniture I'm interacting with when I'm sitting there carrying this around. Is this sit back in the evening in your living room? Is this pick it up at the office and consult it? Is it wave your hand on it while you're cooking? Because this has to fit into life.
My first iPad is going to be bought explicitly for the couch, and it's going to sit on my coffee table just like a magazine does.
And how much? I don't spend any time on my couch. I have no frigging time to be on my couch. Do you? Honestly, like, what is the lifestyle integration of this device?
I'm there every night. I have kids, and I have to sit there watching the kids. So, yeah, I'm there every night.
and I'm not saying that to be a naysayer. It's a genuine question. Like,
technology I think it's a really good question. I think it's a really good question. And I think that what Dan Farber just said is actually closer to the reality of it. I don't think that this is a panacea for the development of rich media. I think this is a device that is going to fit into the center of our computing experience, and it's going to roll up, largely it's going to roll up text and not video and not audio and not games and all those other kinds of things. It's going to be a platform which we use basically across the divide between work and play. In other words, I'm at home. I'm allegedly helping my daughter with her homework, but in reality, she knows far more about math than I will ever know. And so I will be, casually glancing over at this device. I'm already busted with the iPhone and the Nexus 1 because I get into this posture of, leaning over this thing and picking at it. But if I'm casually leaning back and pretending to watch whatever television show they're watching, and I'm at the same time flipping through a bunch of stuff, some noise from Dave Weiner about, so on and so forth, that's going to take up, as I said last week, about 75% of my computing time. That's a huge transformation. And everything else is going to flow into that.
But you've got to have both hands holding. I mean, I'm being very ridiculous here, but you've got to have both hands holding up the screen. Unlike your laptop, which can sit in your lap while you're on the couch and sit up for you, you've got to have both hands on the screen. You're flipping through. When you've got to type, you can't really type. I mean, I don't know. I'm genuinely curious because the questions Dan were getting at about what content will be built into it.
You said you love your iPhone, right?
Right.
Okay.
But it's not a two hands, like.
It's not?
It's not that kind of device.
Have you learned how to type on the iPhone with one hand?
Yeah, and I got carpal tunnel, actually.
Okay. The iPhone is a two-handed device as well.
Again,
it's just harder to use than a bigger screen.
Yes, the bigger screen will be very, very nice. But the reason I'm asking this is
like,
not to be a
I hate it.
naysayer,
It's an invasion of privacy, but I'm going to get 20 of them.
I'm not, and I'm honestly not asking these questions to be a naysayer. I'm asking them because when Dan starts talking about what types of content will succeed, who will be willing to build content for it, what shape the content will take, what's in it depends on where we are in our lives when we're using it. So I'm curious.
Well, at the launch, the Apple execs kept sitting on couches to demonstrate it. This was the sort of almost farcical aspect of it, where they would say, "Look at this new device," and now they sit on the couch and sort of hunch their knees up so they could rest it on their knees and pretend that they actually had their hands free.
I mean, I love, my favorite tweet was, "Oh, finally, an iPhone I can't fit in my pocket."
Well, I think that's exactly right. Tina points out, the car. I mean, my daughter's getting her license in 2 weeks.
Great.
It's like, Naomi, take me
I wasn't
to
texting. I was
Naomi,
in
take me to the
Coverflow.
Starbucks, and then I sit back there in the car.
Pistachio, here's one place I'm going to be using it with Google Buzz, and Facebook and Twitter, because most of what I'm doing there is poking at the screen, clicking like or favoriting a tweet, or just using the gesture to move down or move up the stream. I'm not really interacting all that much. In fact, most people who use these streams now aren't actually participating. We know that, right? So of the people you see, you're only seeing 1%. You're seeing the people who actually participate, and even then, it's a short participation. It's writing 140 characters to answer back a post you saw and say, "Oh, that post is interesting, but I saw something else, here."
Look.
So it's a copy and paste. Very short, very pokey, and that is perfect for the iPad.
Laura, do you think that...
Anyway, I gotta run.
All right, thanks, Robert. See you next time.
Bye, Robert. See you in Austin.
Go ahead, Andrew.
I was going to ask Laura whether she thinks that the iPad will replace the computer for regular people. I mean, no. I mean, I would like one of these devices, but I'm not convinced that I need it in addition to my laptop. I don't really understand what the difference is between what I'm going to do on this iPad and what I'm going to do on a laptop. And probably in the end, it will replace the laptop.
Which is totally possible. I'm a conservative Luddite when it comes to stuff like this. I freaking love my MacBook. I can't imagine walking away from it, especially for something without a keyboard and a camera.
Right, but I loved my MacBook Pro until the MacBook Air came out, and I couldn't think why I'd want to dumb down the MacBook Pro with a lower powered device, and yada yada yada. It does have a camera. There will be a camera. There's a slot on the iPad for a camera. These things will come very quickly, as Laura pointed out at the beginning. The second that I picked up the Air and walked into the kitchen to grab something to snack on while watching some stupid streaming Steve Ballmer speech or whatever it was that I first did this, it became an appendage of my reality, and the iPad it's the MacBook Air without the keyboard, which I don't use much either. So
plus you'll have a keyboard. I mean, you can have an add-on, right?
of course it's got Bluetooth.
Well, wait, if
fine.
it's a screen and a keyboard, why not just have a touchscreen MacBook?
Okay.
Well, that's what it is.
Because then it's handy and it's hinged and I can tilt it.
Yeah, but who needs the hinge?
This thing isn't vertical. Every screen we look at is vertical. Our laptop, our television, our iPhone when we interact with it is vertical.
You get a little stand. I mean, I'm looking at everybody on
right.
all
Are there
going to
be little stands for it? Is that?
Yeah.
Is the Pope German?
There'll be a huge aftermarket in little stands. Absolutely.
Yeah, in a heartbeat.
And then they'll tip over and fall on the floor and it'll break.
I know, it's going to be rough, and we'll have to buy another one. And thank God it broke so that I can upgrade to the next one.
It's like losing your phone on purpose, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
There'll be spouses everywhere. You broke that on purpose.
And they will be right.
Imagine how many people will sit on the couch with Scoble.
Yes.
Are they going to get lost like your socks under the couch cushions?
No, they're too big.
This
to
will
get
get
lost.
scratched by my puppies. They're already they grab the keyboard and start typing stuff. If
See,
the screen's the flat thing lying on the couch, it's going to be
This
covered.
is what we
in dog
like about the
footprints.
Gilmore Gang. It's this high-value technical discussion here. All right. Seriously, has Laura never held a book? Says Ken Shepherdson.
Oh.
What's a book?
All right, so I want to get a couple of facts.
But no, actually, Ken, that's an awesome comment, because when you hold a book, you're not doing anything else, and the things we're talking about doing here are much more sitting with family, cooking, watching TV, multitasking, right? When you're holding a book in those environs, it shuts you off from those people. You can't hold the book and chat with your daughter about her algebra homework. So that's actually kind of my point.
Newspaper, then.
Newspapers even worse. Yeah.
You know, the social media conversation. You know, the
I
speed
think
with
part
which
of it, the size of it is a problem, right? When you've got the phone, it's in one hand. It's like that. It's not blocking the world out, so you can look up and down. And also, what you're looking at is not in other people's faces. Whereas if you've got something that's the size of a laptop screen in your hand, and that has something on it, that there you go. That's going to be in everyone's peripheral vision.
Do I have to show you
on
what
your
the
screen is going to
ergonomics
show
of
up?
this is? It's not a problem. Yeah, that's about it. Only it's really thin, doesn't weigh a lot, and you get all these cool offers on it. You know, you get free. You know, the so and so's next. Neil Young's next single is going to come directly into this thing, and you're going to click on it. You're going to play it. You're going to say, "I love that," and it's going to ask you whether you want to buy it and have it, you know, streamed directly to your central home server, which is controlling all of this, and you're going to say sure. And you know, Neil Young's going to actually start selling records again.
Is this show sponsored by Apple?
Indirectly. I mean, we poured enough money into Apple. There's 5 Mac Minis here, and 3 MacBook Pros, and an iMac, and a MacBook Air, and yeah. I mean, you couldn't do this show. I mean, Leo did this show with some Macs and some PCs. This one's more Mac, and pretty much all Mac except for the TriCaster, which is a PC, but it's a specialized PC. So you know, I mean, Apple has really pioneered this. You know, the whole idea of video conferencing, what we're using here for communications. You know, Apple invented it, rolled it out, and continues to lead in it. We use Skype. We don't use iChat. We could use iChat. We would lose these little pictures in the lower left-hand corner.
Come on, one more time, Laura.
But yeah,
140 Nation.
You know, you know, the subject of who's, you know, where the economics of this is going, is, I think, going to build extremely rapidly. You know, the distinction between what people call advertising or sponsorship-supported models and subscription-based revenue is going to disappear. They're both indistinguishable from the other, and we'll see that happen, I think, within the next 3 months or so. I mean, Laura, right now, what's the percentage of iPhone apps in your store?
You mean how many of the total?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's under 10%. There's about 2,500, but it depends on, you know, Twitter apps are very hard to count. Twitter says there's 50 to 60,000 apps. That just means there's been 50 to 60,000 requests for the API token. Actual usable, this is something apps. Yeah, you know, it's 1 in 10 that's an iPhone app.
Mm-hmm. And what about Android? Is that coming up?
Android is coming up quickly. Windows is a notable laggard. Originally, there was only 13 Windows mobile apps and no desktop apps. Now there's a few Windows desktop apps and I think 20 Windows mobile apps. Android is growing quickly though, and I've not tried the Nexus One yet, but I've tried to talk to a couple iPhone fans who switched to it and were surprised how much they loved it. So
yeah,
we'll have to see.
I'm pretty much split now between the two. I haven't figured out how to get my phone book over to it in any kind of automated way, and of course, you know, I'm terribly afraid of revealing my secret phone numbers through Buzz to the world. Not.
Let's just all start a social network where our social security numbers are handle and just get it done with, shall we?
Well, I mean, that's what, Scoble just puts it on his forehead and, and just trains a camera on his forehead as he runs around the universe. I think Nexus One is an extraordinary device, and I think all it really does is to accentuate the power that is embedded in iPhone applications at this point. It also sort of illustrates that that's going to be ported over rather rapidly. And if those of you who saw the Windows Mobile videos, as I did, I haven't seen the actual device, but it looks pretty clear to me that that device is going to get a good solid 20 or 30% of the market. I think, what was the name of that company? Nokia. I think they're toast. And the BlackBerry, although it's very strong in the business environment. I was at a Salesforce event on Wednesday with Mark Benioff, and he showed the new, Chatter for the enterprise, Twitter for the enterprise app that they're rolling out on an iPhone and on the BlackBerry. But he already is starting to get a lot of pressure from some of the developers coming up and asking him when the Android version is going to be available. So I think that Android is going to drive this adoption. Do you think that if you added all those apps up in aggregate, mobile apps, is it still just 10%, or is that going to get bigger? Laura.
10% that will be iPhone, or 10% that will be mobile?
Mobile.
Oh, yeah, mobile's way, way, way more than 10%. I thought you were literally asking just the iPhone.
Yeah, I was, and now I'm asking, what's the overall percentage you think?
In a system where the mobile is the beauty of it, I think quite a few will be mobile. I actually haven't run the numbers on total mobile apps. Let me see if I can figure something out while you guys talk.
Okay, Kevin, you've been sort of gesturing.
So, I think it goes back to the Buzz thing. Of Buzz is trying to bring this idea of short communications into the email world, and I think with the sort of BlackBerry worldview of device, and suddenly the email has been very much a second-class experience on the iPhone, less so on the Androids, but it's in the center with BlackBerry, and BlackBerry has always had the SMS plus everything unified inbox idea working well on there, and to some extent what we're seeing with Buzz is trying to do some of that in the same way, so that you've got your email inbox with these other kinds of messaging in there too. I'm not sure whether that is necessarily a thing that everyone wants. I think that there are people who think in an email-centric worldview and therefore are drawn to the BlackBerry, and potentially Buzz will bring the sort of Twitter-ness into the inbox, though there are problems with the difference of the structure of the way Buzz works and how it privileges other people replying to somebody else over the people you're actually following, and that may mitigate against that. But the overall idea of the inbox is the metaphor that people understand is what Buzz sort of brings to the real-time web party, if you like. But I'm not sure, I'm not convinced that necessarily is the ultimate answer for how we should experience this. I think, as Laura was saying, the key part of Twitter is that it's a mobile experience. It's very, very personal, which is why having other people see it over your shoulder is not necessarily a nice thing. If you've got this big iPad and everyone can see the little messages you're getting, how much of that is something you actually want to be going on? So I'm a little sort of mixing there's some mixing of metaphors going on here that I'm not sure how much that connects together and follows.
Yeah,
through.
I think you're overstating the looking over the shoulder or having the thing blocking people's view of the ice skating on television crisis. I just don't think that's...
It'll make us buy bigger television so we're not blocking so much.
No, I think it's going to make you buy more iPads. I think the iPad is going to be absolutely huge. It's going to be the way you relax when you're
huge, yes.
When you're fed up with doing this.
It's going to be the way that you relax.
Say again?
I said it's going to be the way that you relax, but not the rest of the world.
Yeah, but I'm a Beatle fan. Remember that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Sure.
and this is some of my bias and some of my naysaying is I'm really thinking ahead to the masses.
Yeah, those Beatles, they really, was just a minor Liverpool phenomenon. It really
Who's?
didn't.
I think the first use case for the iPad is just it's a nice big fat iPad Touch.
Well, that is what
Yes.
it is, isn't it, Dan?
Yeah, so I think that's the use case here. And I think you'll see a lot of people on
Right.
airplanes
And you're going to see people on
coffee shops
airplanes
and whatever, and they'll be using that, and then
and
the real
cars.
geeky people will buy the hard keyboard and stick it on it, and that'll be their main machine.
I think that's exactly right. And in the meantime, what are they doing? They're doing all this social media crap that everybody seems to be fascinated with, and they're going to be doing it on, the iPad. Right? And then they're going to be upselling and cross-selling and mayor of this and go all of that. And, all of these things are going to flow through and create economic pipelines where people are going to make lots of money, which they are then going to give free versions of it to the masses. And it's going to be a mainstream phenomenon, not a geeky phenomenon.
No, you're wrong. Where's the free version? That's where I'm encouraged. Beauty of Apple is they charge people for stuff. People pay for apps. They pay for their email. So I think that the Apple version is good for the creative class. It's good for big media companies like Dan. It's good for all of us.
Absolutely. And it's also good for Google to give away the same device for free. You want to say thank you?
Yeah, because it shows that free is not really free. There's always something else involved.
All right, well, hold that thought. Laura, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me and tolerating my out-of-touchness. I promise to study more next time.
We rely on it, actually.
Now I know why you invite me. Ciao.
See ya.
Bye.
So, Andrew, back to you with your Luddite
That's not Luddite.
perception.
I'm
Yes.
agreeing with you.
I love how I don't understand that part. Where's the agreeing with me part?
I agree that the iPad is a big deal. I don't think it's like the Beatles, but
No,
I'm
I
not
don't think
obsessed with
anything's
the
like
Beatles like you. I think that it will change people's behavior and offers an extremely more viable, realistic business model for media companies and creative people than the Google model, which is giving the stuff away for free and selling advertising around it.
Yeah, but I think that you're overstating the differences between the two platforms. I think that they're basically converging into one. I mean,
you're going to be able to play YouTube on the iPad. Obviously, that's going to work fine.
yeah,
well, that's true.
it does work fine.
Yeah. Viable business.
Sorry, you have to either rustle papers and not talk, or talk and not rustle papers.
Well, YouTube is still struggling for a business model. I think this goes back to the idea of the app, which in my view offers a more intimate experience for the consumer. So they get the sense that that it's worth buying something. And in a sense, the app world replaces the browser, and it becomes much more of a conventional market experience where you want something and you pay for something, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, I think it's a little more nuanced than that. I think it's sort of a inversion of the razor and razor blades story. I mean, what Apple does is to sell the razors and give away the razor blades. What Google is apparently doing is selling the razor blades and giving away the razor. So, when those two models converge, which they seem to be doing right now over the next month or so, then the question is there anybody else who's going to come in? I mean, is this just going to go back to the major content owners controlling the means of distribution? I think not. There's the ability to do what we're doing here, for example. This is ideal for this new iPad audience and market. So, is this going to be crushed by the lords of New York coming in and mandating tariffs, et cetera, et cetera? I don't think so. So I don't know what this hybrid marketplace is, but I think it's a little of both of these models. I don't think Google is as much an advertising company as a behavioral analysis company, and I think that Apple is going to rapidly move in that direction in order to be able to avoid getting undercut too much in terms of their pricing. You know, I mean, this Nexus One thing, look out. This is there are definitely reasons why it is not as well engineered or designed or software enabled as the iPhone. The iPhone is a much more elegant device, but the synergy of their various services flowing through this device. I mean, I can look at not just I can look at track on this device. I can't look at track on the iPhone. I can't get to it. It's coming over. Go ahead.
So the other thing is that when you go shopping for a phone now, you're basically choosing between Androids. I had this experience because Rosie had a phone store and we went and buy a new one, and it was like, okay, you know, what are the choices in this shop? And the interesting choices were basically all different variations on a theme of Android. It was like, okay, we've got one that has a bigger screen, one that has a keyboard that folds out, one that's smaller and lighter. But underneath them, they were all running the same OS, and we knew we could install the same apps on them. Or we could go and choose some other thing that was some locked manufacturer's thing that we didn't actually want. And okay, we weren't shopping in the AT&T store because we weren't looking at the iPhones because we were in the T-Mobile store. But that was, you know, suddenly struck me that actually, you know, I've used to be having one of these at a time and getting the next one and thinking it's better, and you have to the Nexus One. But actually, if you look at it now, there's a whole spread of these things from the the cheap bundled one that costs next to nothing, and the weird one that they've got. What's his face? With the guitar thing they're advertising on the TV, which makes no sense at all to me. And then there are the other ones that are, this one clearly has a usable keyboard, this one doesn't. Eric Clapton. Have you seen that?
Yes, I have. Sense to you? I can't tell whether it has real strings on it or whether that's an animation on the, or is that just part of the ad.
It's an app. There's an app. I actually looked at this thing in the shop.
But there's strings.
Like,
you can see him playing the strings, and they vibrate.
It's a picture of strings that he plucks on the screen. There's an app for that, yeah. But it's, you know, is that trying to appeal to you? Would you buy the Eric Clapton iPhone? Would you buy the John Lennon iPhone? What's
the John Lennon? Yeah. Unfortunately, I would, even if I had no use for it, which is true.
So you bought Beatles Rock Band so you can have the right guitars. And
I bought Beatles Rock Band. The only thing that I haven't bought of the Beatles yet is that. Well, I can't comment on this owing to the embargo machine over to my right.
Hey.
Well, it's got this really wonderful green apple, and it has, you know, FLAC. FLAC, is that? I believe that's better quality than is available on a CD.
Depends how you set FLAC up, but yeah, FLAC can
support. That was their pitch.
More than 16 bits, yeah.
You know, the engineers at Abbey Road, I actually believe, when they say that something's better, I believe them.
Well, yeah. I mean,
at least until they get bought by.
I don't think you can actually hear more than 16 bits, but if you go to floating point audio, if you go to 24-bit audio, it is better than
24-bit.
Okay.
So yeah, I will spend any amount of money that I don't have on the Beatles.
So
at least that's what I'm saying on TV. So all right, Andrew. So you want to wrap this one up? Yeah.
Time to go.
All right, Dan Farber, you still there?
I am.
Wow. We got more than 20 minutes out of you, and it's been a great pleasure.
Well, I went on and I went off, and I came back, and the conversation just seemed to flow, and I could enter the stream at any point and feel like I could drink of these incredible waters.
And not only that, but when you get your iPad, you'll be able to sit back and relax while you do this.
I will. I'll be very excited to
It does have an
watch movies on my iPad instead of my iPhone or my 46-inch TV.
Well, this show, by the way, is iPad compliant. If you go to Ustream, to their iPhone stream, you can watch this in real time.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's excellent. I want to thank, speaking of thanking people, I want to thank Rackspace, without whom this version of the Gilmore Gang would not exist. And I, again, want to thank Rob Legess for his part in bringing this back to the network, as well as the fine people at Rackspace and the fine people at NewTek, makers of the incredible TriCaster, without which I wouldn't even be thinking about doing this on video. And I want to thank everybody who showed up, and especially those who didn't. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.